The Mind of a Tyrant, Inside the Dark Thoughts of Joseph Stalin. Introduction. The silence of fear history remembers many ruthless rulers, but few names evoke the same cold dread as Joseph Stalin. His portrait once hung in millions of homes across the Soviet Union. Children memorized poems about him. Newspapers called him the father of nations. But behind the propaganda, behind the smiling photographs, behind the carefully staged parades, lived a man driven by suspicion, cruelty, and an unrelenting hunger for absolute power. To understand Stalin is not merely to understand a dictator. It is to explore the psychology of a man who reshaped an entire nation through terror, a man whose thoughts could condemn millions to death. Tonight, we step inside the mind of one of the most feared rulers in modern history. Chapter 1. The child who learned violence. Joseph Stalin was born in 1878 in the town of Gori in the Russian Empire, today part of Georgia. His birth name was Obsessive Jugashvili. The world would later know him as Stalin, a name meaning man of steel. But his childhood was anything but strong. His father, a poor cobbler, was a violent alcoholic who frequently beat both his wife and young Joseph. The home was filled with rage, shouting, and fear. Many historians believe these early experiences shaped Stalin's darkest instincts. He learned early that power came from domination, and weakness invited punishment. Young Joseph became cold, withdrawn, and deeply resentful. He also became calculating. Teachers later remembered him as intelligent but manipulative, a boy who watched others carefully, a boy who waited. Chapter 2. The birth of a revolutionary. As a teenager, Stalin was sent to a religious seminary in Tbilisi. Ironically, the institution meant to create priests produced a revolutionary. There he encountered radical political literature, especially the ideas of Marxism. He read, secretly at night. Books were hidden beneath mattresses. Soon, faith in God was replaced with belief in revolution. He began organizing underground groups, printing illegal pamphlets, plotting against the Russian Empire. Stalin was expelled from the seminary, but this only pushed him deeper into radical politics. Soon he joined the revolutionary movement led by Vladimir Lenin. Unlike many intellectual revolutionaries, Stalin had a different skill. He understood crime. Chapter 3. The revolutionary criminal. To fund the Bolshevik movement, Stalin organized bank robberies, kidnappings, and extortion operations. One of the most famous occurred in 1907 in Tbilisi. Armed revolutionaries attacked a bank convoy in the city square. Bombs exploded. Gunfire erupted. Dozens were killed or injured, and the Bolsheviks escaped with enormous sums of money. The mastermind behind the operation? Stalin. Even within the revolutionary movement, many were disturbed by his ruthlessness. But Vladimir Lenin saw something useful. Stalin was loyal, disciplined, and completely willing to use violence. Chapter 4. The path to absolute power. After the Russian Revolution, the Bolsheviks seized control of Russia. Lenin became leader of the new Soviet state, but Stalin held a quieter position, General Secretary of the Communist Party. At first, it seemed like a bureaucratic role, but Stalin understood something others did not. Control the party, and you control the country. He carefully placed loyal supporters into key positions. One by one, year after year, when Vladimir Lenin died in 1924, a brutal power struggle began. Stalin outmaneuvered every rival, including Leon Trotsky. Trotsky was exiled, then later assassinated. Stalin was now the undisputed ruler of the Soviet Union, but his true nature was only beginning to emerge. Chapter 5. The paranoia of power. Absolute power did not calm Stalin's fears. It magnified them. He trusted no one. Friends, generals, even family members. All were potential traitors in his mind. He became obsessed with conspiracies. Enemies hiding everywhere. Inside the party, inside the military, inside the government. His solution? Destroy them all before they could betray him. Chapter 6. The Great Purge. In the 1930s, Stalin unleashed one of the most terrifying campaigns of political terror in history. The Great Purge. Secret police arrested millions. Showed trials, forced confessions through torture. Old revolutionaries were executed. Military leaders were shot. Government officials disappeared overnight. Neighbors informed on neighbors. Children were encouraged to denounce parents. Fear became the foundation of society. Historians estimate that hundreds of thousands were executed. Millions more were sent to forced labor camps. The Gulag, a vast network of prisons stretching across Siberia. Many never returned. And through it all, Stalin watched, cold, unmoved. Chapter 7. The psychology of cruelty. Those who met Stalin described a strange personality. He could be charming in private, soft-spoken, even humorous. But beneath the surface was a terrifying mind. He enjoyed psychological games. At dinner parties, he sometimes forced guests to drink excessively, then watched them humiliate themselves. He laughed as powerful officials begged for mercy. He kept lists of people to arrest, sometimes crossing names off with a pencil. A single mark meant death. Chapter 8. The Ukrainian catastrophe, one of Stalin's most controversial policies, was forced collectivization. Farmers were forced to surrender land and crops to the state. Resistance was brutally punished. In the early 1930s, this policy contributed to a catastrophic famine in Soviet Ukraine. Known today as the Holodomor, millions starved. Entire villages disappeared. Yet the Soviet government continued exporting grain. Food existed, but it was taken. Many historians argue Stalin knew exactly what was happening and chose to continue. Chapter 9. War and the Iron Leader. When World War II erupted, Stalin faced a new enemy, Adolf Hitler. At first, Stalin believed Hitler would not attack. He ignored multiple warnings. When Germany invaded the Soviet Union in 1941, millions of Soviet soldiers were unprepared. The invasion nearly destroyed the Soviet state. But Stalin refused to surrender. Cities were burned rather than abandoned. Factories were dismantled and moved east. The war became a brutal struggle for survival. Eventually, the Soviet Union pushed German forces back. And by 1945, Berlin fell. Stalin emerged not only as dictator of the USSR, but as one of the most powerful men in the world. Chapter 10. The dictator's final years after the war. Stalin's paranoia grew even worse. He suspected plots everywhere. Doctors, scientists, military leaders, even his closest advisors. One famous conspiracy, known as the Doctor's Plot, accused Jewish doctors of planning assassinations. Many historians believe it was the beginning of another massive purge, but Stalin never carried it out. On March 5, 1953, Joseph Stalin died after suffering a stroke. Ironically, the people around him were too afraid to enter his room. They feared disturbing him, even in death. His terror still ruled. Chapter 11. The legacy of fear. Stalin left behind a transformed Soviet Union, an industrial superpower, a nuclear state, but also a nation traumatized by decades of repression. Historians debate the exact number of victims. Estimates range from 10 million to over 20 million people executed, starved, or worked to death in prison camps. Stalin believed cruelty was necessary, that fear was a tool, that terror created obedience. In his mind, the suffering of millions was simply the price of power. Conclusion: the dark mind of history. Joseph Stalin was not merely a dictator. He was a man who mastered the psychology of fear. He built a system where loyalty meant survival, and suspicion meant death. Even today, historians continue to debate how such a man could rise to power. Was he a product of his time, a master manipulator, or simply one of history's most ruthless personalities? Perhaps the most disturbing truth is this: Stalin did not rule alone. His power was built on a system where fear silenced millions, and silence allowed cruelty to flourish. The echoes of that silence